There we go. Perfect. Okay. So our guest tonight is Dr. Fadwa. She's a follower of Jesus, a wife, a mother, and a doctor of pharmacy. So after 23 years of experience with Henry Ford Health System, specializing in adult chronic disease management, teaching, presenting, publishing research, working alongside physicians, and making a niche in the complementary medicine. Oops.
You're okay.
This is my notes. Presenting, publishing research, working alongside physicians, and making a niche in complementary medicine. Dr. Fadwa founded Applecross Wellness to focus on root cause healing and using both a conventional and functional medicine approach. So Dr. Fadwa is very passionate about the subject of mental health and wellness in children. And tonight we're going to just be discussing the underlying causes and what we can do to address these solutions. So Dr. Fadwa, thank you. Forgive me for tripping over you. I know you could have jumped in and corrected me at any moment. Can you let us know first, why is this so close to your heart? Why is this a topic that is something that you just feel so passionate about? I know you're touring the country speaking on this subject.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I lived with major depressive disorder all my life since I was a kid, and generalized anxiety. And can you hear me okay? Just make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I know how debilitating that was for me. And it also affected, my marriage. I thank the Lord I have a wonderful husband who is extremely patient with me. And I'm not shackled to that anymore, but I know the pain that I went through, and not only for myself, but the pain that affects my family, my friends, my job, my purpose, living my purpose. And then my youngest daughter, who just turned 18 2 weeks ago, experienced OCD for 5 years, debilitating OCD. And she's no longer had that issue, and she's doing great. But, I saw what she struggled with, how it impacted the family. So not only was she hurting, but her sister was hurting watching her hurt. We were hurting watching her hurt. And then, you have plans for your kids, right? And we homeschool our kids, and you have plans for them. And that takes a big detour, and everything's all about the OCD and getting the real grace out, really is what I call it. And then lastly, since COVID, these last 3 years have been, masking of our kids, mandates,
Yes.
lockdowns. I live in Michigan, so our lockdowns were a lot longer than other states. And, you couldn't see your friends, you couldn't go out, and the fear that came with that, and the anxiety that came with that. And so that all produces swollen brain, neuroinflammation, and you can't think straight when you feel like that. So I know what I went through. I know what I went through as a parent. And I can only imagine post-COVID. We don't even have the numbers of the debilitating effect on post-COVID on our kiddos, toddlers to elementary, middle school, and young adults.
It was crazy. And I love that you made it your passion, because the idea is that when we go through a struggle, that is then our mission to go help others through that as well. Right? So can you explain to us, when we say mental illness, just for clarification purposes, what does that encompass? When we're speaking in general about children's mental health and well-being, are we talking it could be a whole spectrum of things? So can you just give us a little clarity on that, on the subject?
So when you think of mental illness, you want to first think of mental health. So mental health comprises 3 things: mental, how you think, the emotional connection, and behavioral. All 3 have to be in harmony together. So if we look at something as an adult, let's just think something kind of traumatic, like you lost your job, you got fired, right? So what are some of the emotional things you're having? You can be scared, you can be anxious, stressed out, am I going to have food the next day? And what does all this mean? Those are appropriate emotions. And then as an adult, you are logically going through those emotions to be okay, I got to find a job. I'm going to get this together. But undertone wise, you're still worried and stressed out. So anything outside of that normal way of processing is a mental illness. And it can express itself as depression, autism, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and all those different mental illnesses are outside of that harmony of balanced mental, emotional behavior. And but they all have names because they all have certain character traits. Bipolar has the manic and the depressive. Depression is just kind of everything is blue. You see everything bad. It's like the self-fulfilling prophecy that this dark cloud is always over you. Anxiety is anxiety, just things stress you out. You're ultra sensitive, and schizophrenia, hearing voices. So they all have their own character traits outside of
That
that
is so
balance.
good.
Yeah.
I love your quote when you do your presentations and you quote Harry Truman saying, "A nation is only as healthy as its children."
Yes.
And so today we have 54% of our children have either a chronic or an autoimmune disease. And now we have this mental health issues on the rise. Can you give some statistics kind of surrounding what we're dealing with today, and why it's becoming sort of a pandemic on its own? And then we'll kind of get into why it's happening, and then some healing modalities that we can start giving to our children.
Yeah, I really hope today, I mean, it's a sobering topic. I want to give you hope and solutions. I'm not going to come to you with like avocado toast and put your kid in bed and they'll feel better. But the numbers are quite staggering. And these are pre-COVID numbers. I don't have post-COVID numbers. So from 2009 to 2019, there was a survey that was done by the CDC that looked at high school students. And 1 in 3 were consistently sad, persistently sad. 1 in 3, it was a 40% rise. If we look at learning disabilities, 1 in 6 have a learning disability. 1 in 3 have a mental illness of some sort. That's including ADHD, attention deficit disorder, and autism. And what has compounded that, and I want to talk about before I go to the next statistics, I just want to give you a visual. So those numbers are pre-COVID. Just think like layering, okay? Here's a first layer of I want to use normal stresses, things that we've had all the time, like peer pressure, competition, divorce in the family maybe, or a death in the family, abuses, alcoholism, what have you, that's like here, like we've always had these. Then compound on it, COVID, and then compound on it EMF, electronic magnetic frequencies, then compound on it glyphosate in our food that is totally neurotoxic, then compound on it social media. Okay, you're adding all these things, compound on it porn being taught in schools. That's a fact. We know that there's porn in the libraries and elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. Porn is the most addictive drug. It is the most addictive drug. It's more than just marijuana, cocaine, or what have you. And porn has risen by 56% in our teens. The largest consumer of porn are 12 to 17-year-olds. Now, why is it so addictive? Because as children are growing, obviously, I mean, this is like a no-brainer, their brain is developing. It's very, it's under construction up until the age of 25. Up until the age of 25. Their brain is still under construction and development. So the one neurotransmitter, so we have different neurotransmitters that allow us to elicit emotion, thought, I just said that, emotions and thoughts and cognitive memory. But the one that's over the charts for kids for a long time is dopamine. And dopamine is the addictive neurotransmitter. It is the hyper neurotransmitter, is an excitatory neurotransmitter. And the one that falls behind that in maturity is GABA. That helps stop all that excitation that where you're constantly, go type of thing.
Put it into balance, so to speak.
It's a balance, but for kids, it's off balanced as they're aging. So porn stimulates that dopamine neurotransmitter even more. And so they're constantly overly excited, and it causes that addiction. And another difference between porn and drugs is that, at least with drugs, if you get rid of it, right, you don't have it in the house, you have all kinds of safeguards around it to make sure you're not buying it or what have you. But with porn, you can't get rid of it. It's here all the time. They're constantly,
wow, it's from the memory.
From the memory, the imagery is here all the time. And that causes an increase of oxidative stress on us. So we have oxidative stress all the time. Our bodies are under stress, even just naturally, like just to make, replicate your cells, digest your food, so you can function and walk and talk and do things. Your body is giving you all that energy and it's making waste. That's natural waste and it's fine. But when we compound it on poor diet or, traumatic circumstances in our lives or some sort of disease state that happens, mental illness, that oxidative stress compounds itself. And eventually your body cannot keep up with decreasing it and cleaning up all that waste. And so there are studies that are showing, and we use the one antioxidant, the primary antioxidant in cleaning all that up is glutathione that comes from the mitochondria. And
Dr.
so,
Fadwa, can we back up a little bit and talk
sure,
to those other issues you mentioned quickly, where you were talking about the EMFs and the layering? First of all, for me, it's interesting because porn for me isn't something I would think about as a factor in children's mental health. So that's absolutely fascinating. And we know it's not good for us. And I think it's always amazing when you see that God has an intention for us. You know, when something is forbidden, it's also for just our general health and well-being, for our goodness, right? Everything has to be properly ordered, properly, in line. So I think that's fascinating. And then when you're talking about the other things, so porn is on the rise, and our children are being exposed to it left and right. And most children have hand devices, you know, just to function in this modern world, to contact their parents. But when you talk about EMFs, right, and those other layers, so we have glyphosate and we have EMFs. Can you talk a little bit more to what other things we're exposed to? And I know we touched on nutrition, the kind of nutrition that our kids are getting today compared to, what they maybe had 50, 60 years ago, what we should be eating, or what maybe they're eating in different countries.
right. So glyphosate. I'm sorry, there was an echo there. There was a school lunch project. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I hear you just fine. I'm just trying to work on my lights over here. They just went out.
No problem. I'm just getting some feedback. Anyways, there's a school lunch project that was done by Zen Honeycutt. She's the founder of Moms Across America. And she did a study on the school's lunches, what was in the food. It was 100% genetically modified, number one. Number two, 95% contained glyphosate. Number three, it had metals. And number four, absolutely no nutritional component, like no zinc, no B's, no C's or D's or anything in the food. If you compare it to a detox study that was done for the average American family home, like, you go to the grocery store, you try to buy fairly healthy, maybe some junk food here and there, just average stuff, like logical things.
80-20.
Yeah. 60% of the food contains glyphosate. So children are eating even more in school. And glyphosate is a chelator. So what it does, it chelates, like it'll chelate vitamins and minerals in your body and deposit it somewhere else in your body. Like manganese, for example, it'll bind up manganese and stick it in your brain. And there's a lot of studies on manganese neurotoxicity with glyphosate. Glyphosate is associated with autism and ADHD. And so it causes neuroinflammation, brain swelling as well. So it leads to other forms of mental illness. And then with the EMF, what we're finding out with EMF, well, there was one study that was done in 2008 that looked at moms, that they were prenatally and post-term. And they found that moms who were using their phone while they were pregnant and even after, like consistently, can cause a rise of cognitive impairment or learning disability. So
Wow.
even just from the womb like that, and then they reaffirmed it if kids continued on like that. So it's so important for the kids, as they're growing, to have to tether their phones. They shouldn't have it in their bedrooms. They shouldn't have any laptops in their bedrooms, have a lot of safeguards on their phone, using it appropriately as they age, right? Like, you're gonna have high schoolers, gonna be studying late at night, that sort of thing. If they're, they're studying. And so you want to make sure they got to use the computer, but you got to have those safeguards. And I'll tell you about my daughter. My daughter with her OCD, we had a lot of safeguards in our house, not because of her per se, just us as a family. And she asked me one day, now she was 11 years old. She was still early on in her OCD. And she said, "Hey mom, she loves to draw. She's very artistic." And she said, "Can I go on Pinterest and get some ideas?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So we untethered the phone. She went on Pinterest, went to get some ideas. And she came back to us within 45 minutes, mortified. And what ended up happening was she was looking up some Disney characters and porn came through.
Wow.
And she was horrified. Now, those are safeguards. It happened quickly. She brought it to us right away. She felt horrible. Will you believe it took a year and a half to get her over that? A year and a half. Imagine if we didn't have the safeguards, what it would be like. And that was just like a few minutes. Who knows? Maybe she was 15 minutes, who knows, until she realized what was happening and brought it down to us and everything. So the EMF and the electron and the social media. And then, when they're already vulnerable, like they're already mentally vulnerable, it's so easy for them to be persuaded and to think things, to question things, that if they had a sound mind, they wouldn't be questioning. And
Sure.
yeah,
Oh, it's so great. That's a whole ball game of its own. And it seems like there's so many things that are almost out of our control to some degree. You know, some things we can cap and do our best, but I find the EMFs, for example, is really difficult. And even the glyphosate, or even the way organic is being labeled today, and it's not as trustworthy as we would like or think it to
absolutely.
be. We're kind of in a place where, you know, it's kind of like the odds are against us a little bit. And then just general nutrition that we're getting. What are you finding then? This is all creating oxidative stress in the body and then just exhilarating it. And then we were also wanting to touch on the fact that a lot of children with these sort of mental disabilities, so to speak, on the spectrum, they have problems methylating even more than regular people. Isn't that true to say?
Oh yeah. So once you start having neuroinflammation, that's a degree of oxidative stress that your body's not able to keep up with. So the other systems are trying to keep up. The whole body's underwork. So you end up causing some, they call them genetic SNPs. You'll have some genetic SNPs in the methylation pathway, which is B6 to B12. So that could happen. With autism, we see cellular dysfunction. We call it CD1, 2, or 3, where the lipid of your cell, the lipid membrane, is all distorted. And so when your lipid membrane is distorted, the genetic signaling is distorted. And so, and just depends on what degree, you know, so that's why they say the spectrum, you know, they have a full functioning autistic patient versus person versus one who just, they don't talk, they're not verbal or what have you. And that has to do a lot with that cellular dysfunction here with the lipid membrane. So that could also be an issue for them. I have one autistic patient, he's fully functioning, he's got a girlfriend and everything. And I have him on our activators and he's doing fantastic, but I also have to add a lot of fish oil for him to help rebuild some of his cellular makeup, because it was clearly showing in the blood work that he has that as an issue. But just to use as an example.
I love that. Let's switch gears then and talk to, so what do we do then? We're bombarded by these things. We're kind of stuck in this situation. So what can we do that's in our control? You know, we talked about kind of protecting ourselves from the EMS as much as we possibly can, eliminating toxins as much as we can, paying attention to our diet, right? And then of course, you know, controlling what our children are seeing or their devices in our home. But then when we talk about a root cause healing, what sort of approaches have you found or that work for you? And just talk to us on that level.
Yeah. So as you're doing all these other safeguards that you just mentioned, and as wonderful as they are, they need to be done. They're not fast enough to deal with the problem when the problem's already happening. So again, let's use my daughter again with OCD. She lives with me, right? I'm a holistic clinical pharmacist. We were already eating very healthy. We already had the safeguards. She's homeschooled. You know, we have, you know, good family support. We go to church. You know, we have these things in place, yet this is still happening for her. So I had to try to reduce that oxidative stress and get her attention. We need to try to reduce the stress internally so you can get your child's heart. You want them to have your heart. You want them to be able to listen to you and not feel like they have to lie, or they get they're disrespectful, or you know, it looks like they're being, or shame or condemnation, like they look like they're being bratty and disrespectful and rebellious. And of course, there's a percentage of that there. I mean, they're kids, but when you see it excessive, when you see it's not making sense based on the situation that's happening, you know they're hurting and they don't know how to tell you. So also take that into consideration as well. They're not going to tell you like, oh, I saw this and this porn and it bothered me, or they don't, because of the shame or whatever they're going through. So with that being said, I want to get to the target point of reducing oxidative stress. There are studies, you could go and look them up, many that are showing a direct correlation of oxidative stress and psychological disorders. They're connected. And now there's more studies out there looking at, so what supplements can we use to help reduce oxidative stress? Well, the beautiful thing is we have the NRF2 pathway, which is a natural ways, genetically pathway through the mitochondria to help increase glutathione and lower oxidative stress by 40%. So it's nice that you have a number the NRF2. I don't know if I can see this properly. I'm sorry.
There it is. There it is.
Okay.
There she is.
The great yellow tablet filled with turmeric. Yes, filled with turmeric and ashwagandha. Turmeric and ashwagandha are adaptogens, which means they know how to adapt to stress. And they're natural activators of the NRF2 pathway. It's better than supplementing with NAC, for example, which is a precursor of glutathione. And the reason why that is when you start supplementing the body, you're giving it a high dose of things, and you're not really sure if that high dose is really triggering the pathway efficiently. And is it stimulating other pathways, overdriving other pathways that it doesn't need to do? So the nice thing about an activator, it turns on that NRF2 pathway. It does a nice adaptogenic rise in taking care of the oxidative stress, and it knows when to stop. It's pretty amazing. And we have proof in the studies that it lowers it by 40% of oxidative stress. So now you don't have to guess. And we know there's a correlation. So that's the best way to start is with an NRF2. And you should see some responses pretty quickly. It just like less arguing in the house,
Wow.
Being able to go to sleep. You'll be able to see some things. I'm not claiming treatment completely by any stretch of the means, but you should see some breather. There should be a breather while you're trying to parent, while you're going to counseling, while you're changing the diet, while you're doing a lot of these other things. And remember, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Because when a child is dealing, like, for example, my daughter with OCD, those OCD thoughts were her parents. They took precedent over me. And it's not that she didn't love me. She loved me, but she was so attached to these thoughts. She wanted to please those thoughts before she would please the parent. And so when we started to treat it and start to get to the root of it, she would fight even more to covet it. So just keep that in mind, that it might get worse before it gets better. But believe me, you're on the right pathway of healing, because we know there's a direct correlation between oxidative stress. And the other product I wanted to go over with you is NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, NAD. This is becoming very popular, very common in studies these days, especially with autism. They're seeing a direct correlation between the severity of mental illnesses like bipolar disorder, autism, and schizophrenia, and they are NAD depleted. So what is NAD? NAD is niacin. It's a B vitamin, and it helps in the Krebs cycle of the mitochondria. Why is that important? Because it helps to increase something called sirtuins. And these sirtuins are what help with cognitive memory and balance, neurotransmitter balance in the brain. And we're finding a correlation that patients with, but it could be with depression too, but right now the studies are looking at bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and autism, that they are NAD depleted. The other pathway that helps to increase sirtuins is a function called autophagy, and that happens when we're fasting. So when you're not eating, like when you're sleeping, let's just put it that way.
Try to get a teen not to eat though.
I know. So when you're sleeping, you should have some autophagy happening to help increase. That's why sleep is so important, because the body loves it when you're not eating, you're not thinking, you're not doing anything, and it can just go to town cleaning up all kinds of messes from the day. But for patients with autism, they have a dysfunction with their autophagy process. It doesn't work very well. So it's important for them to have that NAD to help increase those sirtuins, and the sirtuins help detoxify. They're antioxidant, anti-inflammatory for the brain. So they work really well, really good for ADHD as well.
Dr. Fadwa, so that will lead into my next question, because going back to what you said about mood disorder, because we're exposed to all these toxins, we are brewing at some level, and we are all manifesting in a different way. Our bodies cry out in different ways. And something I didn't realize before I started these products, I actually thought I was totally healthy and I was taking them for prevention, was my mood improved dramatically, especially during my pregnancy. And now I look back and I think, oh my gosh, I think I mean, self-diagnosed, right? But those explosions or those mood disorders. And I feel like, wow, I think I had more like almost a bipolar or something beforehand. And then that was something I noticed right off the bat. And we give it to all of our kids. And so what I want to kind of talk to you, like hear your thoughts on, and kind of educate our audience tonight, because those bottles that we're holding up, like our beloved Protandim NRF2, it's going to say on the bottle not for pregnant or nursing women, not for children under 18. Maybe the NERC 2 doesn't say it, but probably the NAD. So can we just talk to the FDA guidelines, why it says it there, and why we just want to educate people to be their own best advocate? Because I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then I'd love to kind of share why I still take it pregnant nursing, why I give it to all my kids.
Yeah, so for FDA compliance, because it has been studied in children and those that are pregnant women. But again, you're your best advocate, you do your own research, and we're dealing with plant-based products. You have to, in low doses too. You have turmeric, it's at a very low dose. My goodness, reserve grapeseed extract, olive oil, that's in the NAD. NAD has olive oil in it. So the doses are just too low to even be overly concerned, but you be your best advocate and do your own research. But that's why we cannot promote it for women and children, because it wasn't studied.
Right. And I think that's something they put across the guidelines, FDA guidelines. They just kind of slap that on all labels, So the way I look at it is I see what it does in the body. And again, very low dosage of herbs working in that synergy, right, Dr. Fadwa, that turn on these amazing, perfectly working systems inside of our body. And so I want that. And then just knowing that I'm raising children in a day and age where there's so many things outside of our control. If you can mute your microphone, there's a couple of people that I think are unmuted at the moment. Let me see if I can find you. Anyway, I give it to all my kids because there's so many things outside of our control. Even in your own home, you can do the best you can. But when you go to a party, some things are just out of your control. Or maybe you don't want to be that parent who's like helicoptering over all the food and you're just grateful to have been invited to a party. You can't control the EMFs, the 5G, and all those things, right? So if you guys can just check and see if you're muted, we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We're not in control of everything. I mean, unless you live in a bubble and you're, growing your own food and, you partner with a farmer or what have you. I mean, you'd have to be really like diligent. But in the meantime, we have these this beautiful complementary ingredients that the exact dose to turn on that NRF2 pathway. You don't have to now take 500 milligrams of turmeric twice a day or a bunch of quercetin or what have you. We already know what it's going to do because it's been studied in that fashion.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it so much. And then again, those low dosages that you were talking about. And normally what we would do would be like high amounts of supplementation in order to kind of be an antidote for what we're dealing with in the world. But actually we don't even have to do that with activation, which is really incredible.
Yes. Yeah. And then it takes away the frustration for parents too, because I'll have parents that are like, I've tried this and I've tried that and nothing's working. And it's masked because the mental illness is so strong. It's really, like I said, my daughter, she coveted her OCD. I mean, she coveted those thoughts. So you're looking for something that you can rely on naturally. It's easy on the body. You don't have to worry about drug interactions with it. It'll actually help make the antidepressants or antipsychotics. If you have to go on those, there's nothing wrong with that. It'll make them work better for you. You won't have to go up in the dose so much or add multiple drugs on board. Like my daughter had to go on Prozac. She had to, and, but now we tried to lower it to 20 milligrams. It didn't work. She does great with 40, but she takes her NAD, she takes her NRF2, she drinks an Axio, the nootropic powders. These are fantastic in lowering inflammation in the brain. They have L-theanine in it. L-theanine is a calming amino acid. Sometimes for my patients, I'll give them extra L-theanine, but that's in these powders, as well as pine bark, which was lots of studies showing the correlation of pine bark and ADHD. Has choline in it. DMAE is a precursor of choline, which is like from egg yolks. And that's very good at lowering inflammation as well. And it has magnesium, and magnesium helps with that Krebs cycle, which is part of the mitochondria. You want to take good care of your mitochondria. You take good care of your mitochondria, it will take good care of you. And that leads me to the last thing. Many people have asked me, well, what about the brain, the gut-brain connection?
Yes.
We know there's a gut-brain connection. It's a fact. And when we have gut products too, we have probiotics, with the fish oil that we have a prebiotic as well. But in my opinion, in my practice, I go mitochondria first, because the gut also has a voice. It's a signaler. And if it's trying to balance itself, and it needs help and your mitochondria doesn't have the capacity to help it, then you're going to get frustrated. And they'll say, well, I tried probiotics. I've done the whey protein shakes. I've done, because they also, those have amino acids in them to rebuild the gut, the whey protein shakes. My kid's bloated, doesn't feel good. Well, we didn't take care of the mitochondria. It doesn't mean you couldn't do that first. I'm just saying that you might be more successful having a healthier gut-brain connection if we heal the mitochondria first. That's my opinion. And that's what I do in my practice. I go there first, and then I go forward to the gut afterwards.
I love that approach. And that's sort of what I do with my own kids. And I was listening to some of the comments here about how to have kids take it. And I just give to my kids an dollop of honey. And so something I want to share too is what Dr. Joe McCourt said, the founder of Protandim NRF2, is that children under 80 pounds only need half a dosage to activate their NRF2 pathway. So I just snap that baby in half, I crush it, I'll put it in a dollop of honey, and they take it. And I know when we've not been on it and when we've been slacking, especially with the little ones, because the only ones who get sick, I have 7 kids, and it's my 1-year-old. He's the one I'm always like, he's fine. He's going to be fine. And that's the one that's coughing at night right now. That's the one that like will get a cold. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to get him right back on it. But literally my children don't get sick because of these activators that we put them on. And I thank God for them. They're just absolutely amazing.
I always say it's an answer to prayer. LifeVantage has been an answer to prayer. It has made things make a lot more sense for my clinic. You know, I can do things with more confidence. It's cheaper because I don't have to order so much blood work. You know, if this is not working, then we'll order blood work if we need to. And a lot of my patients don't come back to me, which is a good thing.
I love it.
So
because you're seeing if the body, you're allowing the body, you're turning on the body's natural healing pathways, and then you're allowing the body to sort of be the naturopathic doctor, so to speak, and kind of take that pressure off of you and allow their body to readjust. And then if there's still issues after that, that's when you can sit down and kind of reevaluate with them, order those tests. Is that the way you approach it?
Exactly. That's the way I approach it. Exactly. And I just hope tonight, you know, whatever questions you need, I just want to make sure I say this. I pray that it's been a hope in a bottle for many parents out there, grandparents, aunts and uncles, because I know what you're going through. We went through it for 5 years. It's not easy, but this will make it easier as you're incorporating the counseling, as you're incorporating the changes, as you're trying to, you know, get involved with their school or their friends, or whatever it is you have to do to get to where you need to get to, so your kid can start feeling better and become an independent adult. You know, my daughter is becoming an independent adult. This product will help make that process a little bit easier for you.
I love that. There's a couple of questions and I'm guessing on the parents per trial. Would you just recommend how to do it as well?
I couldn't hear you very well. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries. Is that still working?
Yeah,
am I there?
Yeah, there you are.
Oh no. What would you recommend for a dosage for NAD for children?
That's a little bit on the tricky side. So the NAD comes in 2 capsules, and you can open the capsules, and it's not as easy as a tablet when you can cut in half and kind of measure it in that way. But I would probably take the same concept with the 80 pounds. I would try to do like a half a capsule if you can with some honey, and then work your way up, like work to a full capsule, like maybe after a few weeks, work to a full capsule to tolerability, because some autistic patients can handle more because the cellular dysfunction is so great. But start off small and work your way up. Like every 2 to 3 weeks, add the extra half. I know it's a powder and makes it a little bit more complicated, but it'll be well worth it because the autophagy needs some support.
I love it. I love it. I think we can wrap it up. We're just over that half an hour mark. Thank you so much, Dr. Fadwa, for being here tonight. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning into these Wellness Wednesdays. I really look forward to them every single week. We have wonderful speakers that come on. So thank you so much for being here. Please stay tuned for next week, and we'll make sure we get these recordings out and put them into our wellness groups. Dr. Fadwa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.